Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our e-invoicing webinar. We'll talk about e-invoicing today, especially from a practical perspective for companies operating in Europe or working with the European partners as well. We all know that e-invoicing is not something new, especially in Europe, but the number of mandates, especially in the past few years and in the next couple of years across Europe, is increasing very rapidly. Still, many finance teams are trying to understand today what these changes actually mean for their business processes and also for the business systems. Our goal today is very simple. First, we will discover what e-invoicing really is, because there are still some misconceptions around it and why it sometimes becomes actually complicated with these evolving mandates as well. And to tackle those mandates, to tackle those complexities, what finance teams should be thinking about as of today. My name is Enes, and I'm running our solution consulting and delivery here in EMEA as part of our global expansion. And I have also my colleague here with me today. Mike, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Mike Johnson. I am one of our product managers here at Charted. I am based in the United States, but been with the company for over 4 years, focused on our invoicing solutions.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike. So before we dive in, I would like to ask a simple question to the room just to understand you a little bit better. And the question is today is where does your business stand with e-invoicing? So there will be, I think, some poll in the background. So please select also multiple options if you can. So if you're fully prepared, already issuing and receiving structured e-invoices, or if you're investigating upcoming mandates or not affected by the e-invoicing yet. Okay, I didn't know it was a single choice, so I just said that you could actually select like multiple options, but yeah, it's just a single choice question. All right, so let's give it a few more seconds. All right, great. So thank you very much for your answers. This actually gives us a great mix because that's also what we observe in the current market situation. And towards like during this presentation, we will also be looking at the e-invoicing in the EMEA landscape and talk about these upcoming mandates. So yeah, I think it's fair to say that you are in the right room today. So all right, so let's first start with the basics to understand what e-invoicing actually is. So when people hear the term e-invoicing for the first time, and that includes myself as well, that the people think that is actually just an electronically prepared and a shared document, such as a PDF invoice sent over an email. However, e-invoicing is a fundamentally different concept. So first of all, when we talk about e-invoicing, we first need to talk about a structured financial data. So the invoices with e-invoices are actually prepared based on some European standards, based on some structured data formats. So they are not just some PDF documents, so like some like generated invoices based on just the PDF format, but we are talking about here certain country specific standards as well. And more importantly, after that invoices created in a structured way, they must be also transmitted using secure e-invoicing networks via accredited platforms. And then there comes to the validation piece as well. So before the invoice is accepted, the data can be validated automatically by the system to ensure that those required fields as per those standards and the tax information is correct. And in many countries, there may be also a real-time compliance requirement, where the data is visible to the tax authorities, to the government platforms in real or near real time. So in short, the e-invoicing is actually a structured financial data exchange between the two ERP systems using secure e-invoicing networks. So we are not only talking about here like some PDF invoices, but we talk about here some financial data exchange using secure e-invoicing networks. So let's now also try to understand why the governments or companies moving in this direction. So that's because e-invoicing solves several common problems today that the finance teams face. So first of all, it brings some built-in validation capabilities. So it means that we'll have fewer invoice rejections through these standard formats. Because if the required data is missing or incorrect, these invoices can be flagged immediately. And then it also means that because the invoice arrives as structured data, there is much less manual entry for account payable team. And another benefits are the clear audit trails and the real-time visibility. And I think this goes hand in hand as well. So the system records shows exactly when an invoice was sent, delivered, or accepted. So the teams also gain better visibility in the invoice statuses instantly. And finally, structured formats make the cross-border invoicing eventually easier because the system understands the data more consistently. So despite the idea of e-invoicing simple and sounds amazing, the reality across Europe can be quite different and can be quite complex for the companies and the finance teams. And there are a few reasons for that. So the first challenge is the regulations and more importantly, the different national paths. So for example, some countries are using PayPal networks and some companies are using PayPal networks plus the central government platforms, which means that they also have some sort of like hybrid approach. Or in some certain countries, like in Nordic countries, we also see country specific networks. And oftentimes these mandates are also like different in nature for different type of businesses. So this really create inconsistent requirement across different regions. So that's why it is hard for the businesses to understand these evolving mandates as they are country specific. And the second challenge is the timelines. So in many countries, we observe some phased mandates, and there are also transition periods within those mandates. So it really makes for businesses really hard to plan their system change. How and when is really hard questions to answer when it comes to these phased mandates. Then we also see different type of formats, even within the same countries, such as in France or Germany. So this alone also increasing complexity as well, because our systems, our solutions must be also providing an ability to process invoices from different formats, from different type of vendors as well. And I will say the final thing is also the compliance piece, because in many countries there are really strict requirements with electronic archiving or VAT, real-time VAT reporting. So this brings another challenge to companies, not only from the system perspective, but also from the business processes as well. So in this slide, I would like to focus on actually what finance leaders should be thinking of today to navigate through these complexities. So the first of all, I think that it is really important to stay informed about these changes and also act early. So for example, understanding the timelines or applications, obligations, whether they apply to the issuing or receiving of e-invoicing or both within your operating countries can really help you to prevent last minute changes. Because as we will see also in the next few slides in our EMEA landscape, there isn't always like a certain approach in each and every country for both issuing and receiving of e-invoices, but oftentimes we also see that actually the obligation is more around the receiving piece as well. So to track all these changes with the formats and the evolving mandates, we believe that assigning someone internally to own these updates can be quite useful. And as we will be now sharing in the chat, we recommend looking at the European Commission's official website and to their e-invoicing hub for these updates and to track those. So there isn't only just country-specific requirements and the technical documentations, but especially in this hub, there are really useful content and different articles for understanding this shift as a whole across Europe. So not only for today, but as they evolve also for the upcoming years. And the second most important thing here is about the architectural flexibility. So we need to ensure that our ERP system can handle differently structured invoice formats. So as this is also requires, for example, real-time or near real-time reporting in many territories, it is important to understand how e-invoicing will integrate with your core ERP process as well. So as we also see different formats, living inside NetSuite, which is a highly customizable environment, can also really help you to adapt these your invoicing process when these formats are updated as well. Because we also see historically that not only the timelines, but also the formats are changing over the course of time. And the last thing is the aligning with the training partners is also important. As there are different type of mandates or sending and receiving, it is very beneficial to align with your customers and vendors to understand the format and the method expectations. Because in some territories, you need to be ready to receive in case a vendor would like to send you an invoice, apart from, for example, a mandatory to send the invoice. So by aligning with your trading partners, you can avoid the last minute changes and make your systems ready. All right. So in the next few slides after this, we will be taking a look on the EMEA landscape and the evolving mandates. But before that, I also would like to stop for a short moment and ask you an additional question to understand you a little bit more. So as you said that you are currently, like most of you currently investigating the invoicing mandates, which country affects your business the most when it comes to the e-invoicing mandates? All right, so let's give a few more seconds. Perfect. So we see here the results that there are some interest in like Germany and France and also the other countries. So we will be talking about in the next few slides specifically about Belgium, Germany, France, and Netherlands. But it will be also good to discover the other countries together with you after our call as well. All right, so let's now take a look at the EMEA landscape. So what we see here as a whole here, of course, there is one single goal, but there are different national paths. So for example, the Belgium. So Belgium, so to say, had a big bang e-invoicing approach in January 2026. So the Belgium made mandatory both issuing and receiving for any businesses in the territory registered for the VAT. So, and also I will say the Belgium choose efficiency over the tax control, unlike other countries. So the structure invoices must comply only with one certain format, which is the PEPAL VIS format. And then they're also using, of course, the PEPAL network for these data exchange between these business system. So having this single change, like single format and using the PayPal network. It also made easier for businesses adopt this change, considering the technical infrastructure in countries like Belgium or Netherlands. But as we see here that the Belgium still intends to expand the application with an e-reporting layer as well by 2028. So this is really an ongoing process even after the mandate come into place. So our next stop here is Netherlands. So in Netherlands, the the B2B invoicing, e-invoicing stays actually still voluntary and it based on the buyer consent. But we also see here the usage of the PayPal network for a structure exchange. And even without the full B2B mandate in Netherlands, I will say the Netherlands is still considered one of the most major e-invoicing environments across Europe, considering the willingness of the companies to invest this kind of strategy and already be ready for the mandate. But there is still no like rigid date for mandating yet, but e-invoicing is still something common. So let's now look at Germany, where things got a little bit of more complicated. So Germany has a phased rollout with multiple formats in place, and we'll also talk about it that it's also tied to the company size. There are also some turnover requirements. So for example, last year Germany made the receiving piece mandatory, and they also had some different type of methods. So you don't really actually have to use an actual secure network. So you can also question it that as we speak that what the invoicing is, what not. But still, what we're trying to tell here is that there are some different formats and different type of approaches also as per different countries based on many different variables here, such as the technical infrastructure. So all of these core formats we see in Germany, such as X-Rechnung or Zugfahrt, using still the PayPal network and based on these European standards, but they prefer having their own specific country format. And by 2027, like all the companies making over 800,000 euros revenue a year must issue and receive e-invoices. And also it's going to be mandatory for all the suppliers by 2028. And when it comes to France, we see actually a similar model like in Germany. So there is a phase rollout tied to the company size as well. And France also accept multiple structure e-invoicing formats such as UBL, CIA, or Factor XX. And also the invoices must be exchanged through these certified platforms connected to government infrastructure, typically via accredited service providers as we speak, like the certified platforms known as PPA. So why the Belgium and the Netherlands, for example, choose seeming to be a more efficient model compared to the Germany and France? So while there are of course like many reasons around it, the main reason is that the Belgium is focused on a system that brings business efficiency versus the Germany and France focused on a system for a tax control. So e-invoicing is a very country-specific topic, and it also shows here in these different type of mandates, phase rollouts, different type of formats within the same country. So for example, while the Belgium and Netherlands model seems very straightforward, and the France and the Germany model might look like messy to an enterprise CFO. But there is also a reason for accepting different formats in Germany and France, such as some readable PDFs with embedded XML inside of them, like Factor X. So the overall goal here that these millions of small businesses doesn't have to invest in expensive software just to read and invoice. All right, so we have covered quite a bit on mandates here. So in the next few slides, we'll explain how we approach the e-invoicing at Charted. So for that one, I would like to hand over to my colleague Mike to walk you through that. So over to you, Mike.
Thanks, Ennis. Yeah, so I'm going to cover a few slides of how we're looking at approaching supporting our customers as they're looking to navigate some of these e-invoicing mandates. I would just like to highlight at this point in the presentation too, we are nearing the end. We may have time for a few questions, so just going to pause here and say if you have some questions, you can go ahead and drop those in the Q&A feature within the Zoom webinar. And assuming we have a few minutes at the end, we'd love to take some of those live. Otherwise, we can follow up with you after the webinar. So here at Charted, we are an AP automation provider, AP automation software provider. And as we're looking at approaching how do we support our customers as they're navigating these e-invoicing mandates, we wanted to start with um, the jurisdiction that has the most recent mandate, and that is Belgium, right? As Ennis covered in some of his beginning slides, Belgium had a mandate that went live in January 2025. So you're going to see some news. Just stay tuned over the next month or so, and we're going to be launching our own e-invoicing solution to support organizations that are registered in Belgium. We are building that solution so that it is able to support the different invoice structures that exist across these different networks. Like Anna said, even though you're registered in Belgium, you might need to be receiving invoices from other jurisdictions or other organizations, companies that are registered in other jurisdictions inside of the EMEA market, and we wanted to be able to support that. Finally, we're looking to obviously expand this, right? So where Belgium is our focus to start with, if you are not currently registered, do not currently have an entity that's registered in Belgium, stay tuned because we look to expand our e-invoicing offerings with time to support additional EMEA organizations and to be able to comply with additional mandates. And really the advantage of what Charted is trying to do is Ennis really highlighted how there's a lot of complexity that even goes into understanding the legal implications of these mandates. But once you do that, that's only part of the problem of supporting e-invoicing for your organization. Ennis talked about this a little bit in his if you're a leader and you're trying to evaluate e-invoicing for your organization, making sure that you have a solution that supports your ERP system is also highly important. And that's here what we like to do at Charted. We want to make sure that we have a true kind of end-to-end AP automation solution. So Ennis, if you flip on to the next slide here for me, I just want to kind of talk a little bit about how Charted looks at receiving e-invoices within NetSuite. So we want to have an end-to-end AP automation solution for your organization. So whether you're receiving e-invoices or you're still receiving documents through things like PDFs, those will flow directly into our software. So there's no need to, just get compliant. And I've talked to customers that have done this. They have kind of an outside solution to get them compliant with something like a Belgian mandate, but then they're still really struggling to figure out how do I get that data from this external system into my ERP system, which is NetSuite, right? We want to bridge that gap and make sure that there's a seamless process from the receipt of the e-invoices all the way through getting that in the system and getting that bill paid and anything else you need to do within your business process. We also have a lot of other features to offer within our AP automation suite. So once that invoice is received, if your organization is using purchase orders within NetSuite, we can conduct things like real-time three-way matches, approvals through emails, even for users that don't have access to NetSuite. We have vendor onboarding solution that can help with collecting information from your vendors through onboarding forms and allow them to submit files, tax documents, other things that they may need to submit through the onboarding process, all the way down through an accrual automation solution. So how can we help you accrue for expenses that maybe have not been received yet and ensure that you have a faster month-end close? So that's the advantage of not only looking at this from hey, I want to be compliant with upcoming e-invoicing mandates, but I want to make sure that I've selected an e-invoicing solution that works for my business and works with the downstream processes that you have within your ERP system. Yeah. So with that, Ennis, I think I can turn it back over to you and wrap up. Dennis. Sorry, you're on mute still.
Good call. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. So to wrap things up, so we know that the invoicing can feel quite complex as we just discussed in this webinar, and especially with these different mandates like across Europe. So to help you with that, we prepared a short guide for you, and you can also scan the QR code right now to download it. And I think that we also received a couple of questions. So because we
Yep.
have like a few minutes to take on those, so let me maybe like quickly take a look at those.
Yep. So
Yeah,
here's a couple of questions here.
yeah,
Main question is around kind of the accounts receivable process versus the accounts payable process and what role Charted plays in that. So I'll just clarify that in a sense it's a little bit more product
yeah.
focus here. Yeah, so Charted is focused from our product offerings on the accounts payable side. So helping you receive e-invoices from your suppliers and vendors that may be sending those. So our invoice capture is focused on the receiving side of the house there, as well as our OCR solutions are focused on helping you ingest invoices that might come from vendors in that format. And again, the nice thing about the flexibility of having both of those solutions is, and it's highlighted in something like Netherlands, right? There's not a mandate where everyone has to send things through the e-invoicing network. So you might have some suppliers that are sending you e-invoices, some suppliers that are still sending you PDF invoices, and having solutions that can support both of those are helpful. That, I think, wraps
Great.
up the questions that we had there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, then I think that was all from our side today, and thank you very much for all your attention and also the answers that we received from you. So if you have any questions, so please feel free to reach out to us, and we hope to see you next time.